Welcome, I'm Droniak, and this is my review of Sid Meier's Starships on PC. Starships is a recently released single-player-only turn-based strategy game developed by Firaxis Games, who you probably already know from games like XCOM Enemy Unknown and more recently Civilization Beyond Earth. Now, Starships is actually a spin-off of Civilization Beyond Earth, taking place immediately after that game's Contact victory. Your civilization has thrived in an alien world and has come into contact with humans on other worlds, so a fleet is assembled in order to bring them under the banner of your brand new United Federation of Planets. But despite sharing the same setting as Beyond Earth, Starships is a very different game. Where Beyond Earth was all about building up your own civilization, this is a game that's all about combat between starships. Even so, a game of Starships starts in much the same way as you would start a Beyond Earth session. You go into a setup screen where you customize your brand new federation, the map size, the player count that you're going to be facing, as well as the difficulty setting. Indeed, the first thing you'll be doing is customizing your federation, much like you would customize your civilization in Beyond Earth. The first thing you do is choose an affinity for your federation. These range from Supremacy, which provides a free wander on your home world, Harmony, which provides halved repair costs for your fleet, and Purity, which provides doubled rewards for any missions your fleet undertakes. Next, you choose a leader, which provides a very different type of starting bonus for your federation, which can range from 2 free technologies that are randomly chosen by the game at the start, or an extra city on your homeworld, or even a 25% production boost to all metal throughout the entire game. The combination of these two elements makes for some very distinct starting setups that can lead to very different playstyles. Indeed, even the AI adapts some of its playstyle to the affinity and leader that it is assigned by the game. Unfortunately, you can't manually select who you want to be facing, the game always chooses this for you. As for the remaining options in the setup screen, map sizes range from small to epic, where small is extremely tiny, good for some 2 players, and epic is actually not particularly large. Indeed, I would say it's not even enough for the maximum count of 6 AI opponents, because you'll be facing each other in battles by turn 2 or 3. As to difficulty settings, those range from easy to impossible, but I'll get back to those in a later point in this review. The first thing you're greeted by in Starships is the sight of a brand new fleet orbiting your homeworld. This fleet can be sent off on missions to neighboring neutral systems to gain influence over the local population and eventually incorporate them into your growing federation. Planets come in different types that provide varying levels of the various resources in the game, like energy, food, science, and metal, and they also tend to provide some sort of bonus, like reduced wonder cost on that planet, reduced repair costs on that planet, or even further boosts to resource production. Planets can also be upgraded with a few different types of buildings that either improve resource generation, add defenses to the planet, or the warp nexus, which allows your ships to move through its zone of influence without taking any morale loss. Morale is very important because that's what determines how many actions you can take within a turn on your star map. Each mission usually takes about 3 out of 10 morale ticks. Each movement towards a planet that doesn't have a warp nexus takes another morale tick. So you really have to be strategic about where you go and which missions you undertake. The other actions that can be undertaken on the star map include upgrading your ship's systems and adding more ships to your fleet. Now, the ship systems range from anything from weapons to shielding and armor, to engines, stealth systems, additional torpedo and fighter bays, and so on. You can also research new technologies that further improve the efficiency of these ship systems, but none of the technologies you research have anything to do with your federation at large or your progress towards actual victory conditions. Lastly, you'll meet your AI opponents on the star map, many of which will be open to non-aggression pacts, but you can also engage in war for control over specific planets or even their entire territory. Battles and missions are what you'll be doing most of the time in Starships. These occur on a very different type of screen and is similar to something like Heroes of Might and Magic or Age of Wonders 3. You're presented with a hex grid where your starships can take moves and undertake actions like launching fighters and torpedoes, firing at enemy ships, or cloaking, and so on. There are several different types of missions ranging from escorts to escape missions to boss fights or outright battles. That may sound like a lot of variety, but realistically by the end of the first game you'll have seen most of them a few times already. The battles are interesting in that you actually have to take into account a lot of different factors. There are obstacles on the map like asteroids that you can either hide behind or shoot through depending on how porous they are. You need to take into account the facing of the enemy, which determines how much damage you deal, so flanking maneuvers are always good to do. There are factors like stealth systems on enemy ships, which may require you to use your sensors to detect them, and modifiers on the map that may affect your shielding, your lasers, your stealth systems. They may even outright cloak torpedoes. You can also play battle cards which have a temporary effect inside your mission, such as improved damage, improved shielding, improved range, and so on. Likewise, the wonders you build in your star map mode have a very significant impact on your battles. For example, the dual commands wonder allows you to take 2 actions every turn, although only one of them can be an attack. Likewise, there's a stealth torpedo wonder that makes all your torpedoes undetectable, and the AI actually respects that even in impossible difficulty. They will not dodge invisible torpedoes. Sadly, the battles and missions only stayed interesting for about 2 campaigns. After that, I had already experienced every mission type multiple times, and the battles had shown themselves to be quite unbalanced, and it was far too easy to take advantage of the very predictable AI. That's going to be plainly in evidence in the upcoming 3rd and final Starships playthrough that I'll be uploading to my channel next week. But before I get too deep into how unbalanced the game really is, let's get back to the star map for a little bit. See, it has a lot of options like improving the infrastructure of your planets, acquiring new planets, and researching technologies and upgrading your fleet, but all of these options are pretty much going to be the exact same throughout the entire campaign. There are no new buildings unlocked, no new technologies, and no new systems. It's all a numbers game of improving what you already have at the very start of the game. There just isn't a lot to it, and it becomes ever more evident as the victory conditions come into play. The 4 different victory conditions in this game are extremely unbalanced, to the point that the population and wonder victories are so easy to obtain that it makes domination and science victories nearly impossible to achieve. The wonder victory is by far the easiest to obtain, as it only requires that you own 7 different wonders. This includes the wonder that you can get at the start of the game if you go for a supremacy affinity, but also any wonders that you conquer from AI-owned planets. But at least the wonder victory can be easily avoided by simply not building wonders, or not too many of them at least. The same cannot be said for the population victory, which requires that you own 51% of the population of the galaxy. That's almost impossible to avoid before you hit the criteria of the domination and science victories. Almost every action you take in-game increases your population in some way, be that acquiring new planets for your Federation, building cities to improve the resource generation on your existing planets, or, if you really want to rush it, improving food production on your existing planets so you can build even more cities in the next turn. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to avoid a population victory if you're going for a domination one, which involves conquering everyone's home world, which in many cases leads to annexing their entire territory, not just the home world itself. And the science victory is even more difficult to achieve. It involves leveling 3 technologies up to level 6, which sounds reasonable until you realize that the costs for getting to level 6 are exorbitant, even if you have exactly the right starting conditions, exactly the right mission types around you. You're still going to be looking at a situation where you could have ended with a population victory 2 or 3 turns before you hit your science victory. And in many cases you'll actually have to actively intervene in AI wars to prevent them from hitting population victories. Even worse, the battle system itself is also extremely unbalanced as a result of the upgrade system the game uses. There are specific combinations of systems and technology upgrades that make your ship completely unbeatable by the AI, which is already easily exploited. By the mid-game, which could be set to start around turn 3, you're probably already unbeatable if you've decided to focus on stealth system upgrades, engine upgrades, or torpedo upgrades, particularly if you have a certain combination of wonders. For example, the stealth torpedo wonder in combination with a loadout of 2 to 3 torpedoes per ship will allow you to wipe the floor with any fleet in the game in a matter of 2 or 3 turns. An even better example of how overpowered some wonder and upgrade combinations are is the dual command wonder, the best wonder in the game by far. If you combine this with heavily upgraded stealth systems, you can easily stealth your ships, fire at the enemy, and move away, and they'll have to somehow catch up to your ship, which they can only do if they have better engines, and be within 1 to 3 tiles range of your ship to be able to see you and attack you. As you can imagine, this is easily exploitable to indefinitely kite enormously powerful fleets and slowly whittle them down to nothing. Now, I have repeatedly mentioned how the AI is very easy to trick, and this is mostly down to their battle tactics. Initially, they seem quite competent. They'll avoid any torpedoes that are visibly aimed at them, and they cleverly use fighters as screening elements for their main battle fleets. But their actual combat prioritization is very easy to exploit. They almost invariably target only one of your ships and all beeline straight for it, much like, say, the enemies in Serious Sam. As a result, it's extremely easy to use one ship to kite the enemy fleet, while the other 2 flank from behind and easily take out enemy ships in a single shot. Once you figure out the mechanics the AI uses to make decisions, there's very little challenge left to the battles in this game. And that's already provided that you're not cheesing by using the mass torpedo tactic. This obviously brings me on to the topic of difficulty levels. Sid Meier Starships can be set for everything from easy to impossible AI opponents, but in practice only the impossible AI opponents proved to be something of a challenge, at least in the early game. By the time turn 4 came around, I was again waltzing all over them, as you can also see in the campaigns that I uploaded to my channel. Despite all the negativity up till this point, I have actually enjoyed my time with the game during the first 3 campaigns I played. After that, my interest was gone, and the only reason I see myself returning to this game in the future is for the My2K integration with Civilization Beyond Earth. Specifically, playing Starships results in rewards for Beyond Earth, like new starting conditions and new map types. Conversely, playing Beyond Earth results in bonuses in Sid Meier Starships. Now, those bonuses actually seem interesting, to the extent that I think they should have been part of the game to begin with. There are 3 different new mission types, 3 different planet types that are completely missing from the game because you have to unlock them by playing Beyond Earth first. On top of that, the other unlocks seem rather unbalanced because they make an easy game even easier. Specifically, you gain access to hybrid affinities that have the bonuses of both affinities involved. So a Supremacy Purity hybrid affinity would gain both doubled mission rewards and a wonder on their home planet at the start of the game. Conversely, the unlocks for Beyond Earth are quite acceptable. They merely add a bit of variety to the game's setup screen. Lastly, it's time for some technical droning, or in this case, a bit of a port report. Sid Meier Starships PC port is abysmal. Firaxis seems to have decided to put in the bare minimum effort to get this working on PC. Sure, it runs on a PC and it recognizes keyboard and mouse input, but that's pretty much the extent of the porting that's been done here. Everything else is practically as you'd see it in the mobile version. For instance, the game only runs at 30 FPS, even though all prior Firaxis PC games have always run at 60 FPS at least. Likewise, there are no visual options to speak of, and there have been no improvements made to the graphics, which even by mobile standards are rather poor. More importantly, Starships doesn't even come with a full screen mode or any resolution settings. There is a borderless window mode, but that has to be the worst implementation of that feature that I have ever seen. It does eliminate the borders on the left, right and top of your screen, but your taskbar will still be in display unless you set it to auto hide. You may also have noticed some stutter in the footage used in this video. That's due to my recording setup. If you're playing normally, the game scrolls perfectly fine with your mouse, and moving your mouse around on screen doesn't result in stutter in the game. This is purely a shadow play recording issue with multiple monitor systems. Starships as a whole runs fine and is very stable in my experience, but it does so at 30 FPS and in a bad borderless window mode, with severely outdated graphics. On top of that, the user interface in Starships is clearly designed for touch devices and hasn't been altered for PC or big screen monitors at all. This is most evident in the star map, where you manage your planets by building buildings and wonders and researching technologies, because all these screens are full screen, yet only take up a tiny portion of the real estate of your likely 1080p monitor. This is most noticeable in the AI dialogue screen, where there are half a dozen buttons on the left hand side, and the remainder of the screen is taken up by 3 lines of dialogue. Was it really too much effort to just turn these into pop-up windows that scaled according to the content on display? Apparently so. This has to be one of the laziest ports I've seen in years, and I hope Firaxis Games learns from the panning that they're getting in user reviews on Steam and never repeats this mistake again. It should come as no surprise that my recommendation with regards to Sid Meier Starships is that if you'd like a lightweight 4X strategy game on the go, then you might enjoy the mobile version of this game. The PC version has been badly ported, and the gameplay itself is extremely oversimplified and severely unbalanced, and as a result it feels inferior to all manner of competition on PC. Games like Sword of the Stars, Sins of a Solar Empire and Galactic Civilizations 2 provide overall similar gameplay experiences, but with a lot more depth. These games stay interesting for years, whereas Starships only managed 3 campaigns of about 3.5 hours each. And when it comes to exploring space in a short strategic campaign, this game doesn't hold a candle to Faster Than Light. That's not to say Starships is an awful game, but on PC it's simply eclipsed by all of its competition. And as such, I see no valid reason to recommend this to any PC gamer. The mobile version might be nice to have for some people who like the game on the go, but I don't see a situation where anyone would actually choose to play this over any number of other games on PC that do very similar things much, much better. That's it for this review of Sid Meier's Starships. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful, and if you did, please do leave a comment, like the video, favorite it, or even subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. And I hope to see you soon in the next video.